Welcome to Conversations with Nurses, a podcast where we chat with nurses from all walks of life. I'm Paula Holland. Join me as I take you into an inside look into the nursing profession, where we explore the human side of healthcare and gain insight into the dedication and compassion that drive nurses to care for others. So grab your headphones and come along for the ride as we dive on Conversations with Nurses. Hello and welcome to Conversations with Nurses. As you may have heard from my previous podcast with the Royal Flying Doctor Service, Australia is one big country with towns and communities so remote it can take days to get to each one of them, especially in the northern parts of Australia. Today I'd like to introduce you to Rebecca, who works in these remote rural places. She delivers healthcare in some locations where access to resources will be very limited. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
What locations would you have gone to?
So I've been working through agencies for about a year and a half now in rural and remote settings. So I've worked in South Australia and Western Australia through the agencies.
Nursing.
So I'm on boarded with 3 different agencies.
And so you just choose the best offer that they give you?
Yeah, and which agent's the most communicative at the time, communicating as well as they are, because sometimes they get busy and then you're not really hearing back from them. So that's why I've sort of onboarded with 3, so I've got more options.
Perfect. The way to do it is. So what made you get in to do some nursing in these remote areas?
Well, I've always had an interest of it since I started nursing, but I ended up working on orthopedics for 4 years in Cairns, and then I did like nursing support in the hospitals, but I really kind of got a chance to work everywhere in the hospital, and I really liked emergency, so I was trying to push towards there, and they needed people to work out at Yarrabah, which is an Aboriginal community about an hour's drive from the Cairns city. Mm-hmm. And I worked there on and off for about 2 years, and I really loved Indigenous nursing and healthcare, and then the emergency side of it as well. So when the opportunity arose, my boyfriend wanted to do FIFO in the mines, so I took up the opportunity to start working contract nursing in remote places.
And never looked back?
No.
You're still doing it?
Yeah, I really love it.
Yeah. Which state were you based in, or where did you do your training?
Cairns. So I did my training in Cairns, worked there for about 6-7 years.
So now you work in these remote places. What is probably the remotest you've been to?
At the moment, so far probably Wyndham in the Kimberley, north of Western Australia. I've got a few more remoter contracts coming up soon, but that's definitely the most remote I've sort of worked at so far.
Wyndham's a hospital though, or a community?
It's a town, and it's got like you'd call it a hospital, but it's sort of a GP clinic during the day and then on-call emergency after hours, and it has no inpatients there.
All right, so they just come in and go out.
Yeah, and then we take turns at being on call, so if someone comes in, then you go up to the hospital and treat them.
Has there ever been any situations where it's been difficult to get to your locations?
No, because I've gone in the dry season, but I definitely think in the wet season it would be a lot harder, especially the Kimberleys had that bad rain and a lot of the roads are gone, Fitzroy Crossing, Halls Creek and that, and they're having massive trouble even just getting food in and stuff like that. Even when I was working up there in Wyndham last year, it was hard. You go to Coles and the whole place had been stripped bare. You couldn't even get eggs.
Really?
I was so excited when I found bananas after 2 months.
And so how do they get their food? Like, where do you get your food supply from?
They have a Coles there, but it's just a matter of luck of if you get what you're looking for. So whenever someone had a day off and they went to town, you'd give them a shopping list and hope that they'd pick up what you wanted, and we'd all take turns and bring back each other things that they might have needed. And
with these communities, are you the only nurse up there? Or have you got a team of people that you work with?
When I was in Wyndham, there was a team of about 6 or 7 of us, and there was 3 permanents and 3 or 4 agency, depending at the time. But like at one point during, some of them got COVID, were off sick, etc., and there was just 2 of us.
Yeah.
It just happens in like those remote areas when you rely on each other and always get called back in to cover for each other.
So the clinics, and have you worked in hospitals in these places?
Yeah, so I've also worked in Harvey, and so they have a inpatient ward think it's about 18 beds, as well as the emergency department. So if you've got no patients in the emergency department, you're helping out on the ward.
Is that Harvey, south of Perth?
Yeah, it's about an hour on the train, 2 hours on the train, about an hour drive south of Perth.
Oh, yeah, so it's not quite remote.
No, but sometimes you don't have a doctor there still.
Yeah.
Even with the emergency department and the inpatients, and they just can't get doctors.
Have you had any tricky patients or tricky situations when you're in these remote locations?
Yeah, sometimes when we didn't have the doctor, I remember on night shifts, I did like 4 night shifts and nothing really happened, most of them. And then the last one, we had one that came in that was so sick that needed intubating, everything like that. And all we could do was put a cannula in and give her medications, couldn't tube her, couldn't do anything because that was just the resources that we had. And we just had to try and get her in an ambulance and get her to the closest larger hospital where there were doctors.
Where was that?
That was in Harvey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
they were getting
not that far away.
No, but then it's just it's also different each state that you work in, the resources that you have as well. So like in Queensland, they have paramedics, whereas in the rural areas of Western Australia and South Australia, they have a lot of volunteers. So the
medical volunteers?
Yeah.
With experience and knowledge?
Yeah, of course. Just it's great. But some of the things that we would get a helicopter for or a flight for in Queensland, you can only get a volunteer ambulance crew. It's just it's an interesting contrast in the different states, the services that you get. From
state to state, you notice the difference.
It's interesting to try and adapt because of the expectation that I have in my head, and then I have a sick patient and the expectation that I think they're going to get isn't met, and I'm like, oh, that's not good enough. But then when I talk to my colleagues and that, they say, no, this is how it works here, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Have you got a favourite place that you've been to, or one that really sticks in your mind that you say, you know what, if I get an opportunity to go back to that, I'm going?
I went back to Harvey.
Oh, Harvey.
Yeah,
okay.
I loved it there. It's such a nice little community and town. I'd love to go back to Wyndham as well. I love that town. The people there were so lovely, and there's such a sense of community, like knew the teachers, knew the shopkeeper, just socially, like they'd all come meet them at the community club, and people would be down there playing darts and trivia nights and stuff like that.
So then, like Wyndham, I've been to Kununurra and Broome. I've seen some of the creatures that hang out in the northern states of Australia. Have you come across any sort of weird or scary critters or creatures that come into the clinic or in your nursing home?
Not me personally, but I've had a lot of friends see snakes inside the hospitals, and sometimes they have a snake catcher that comes and gets them. Otherwise, I do not worry what they do to get them out.
Yeah. Just keep an eye on them.
Yeah.
Make sure they don't go near you.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're eating the rats and mice.
That's it.
Yeah. No one's ever been hurt by them? Or?
No, you get snake bites that come in, but never from inside the hospital.
Are they deadly, the ones? The snake bites, you've got antivenom?
Never had to give antivenom, but most clinics will hold antivenoms. It just depends because it's so expensive to hold and the shelf life and all that sort of thing. So each clinic is different to what they hold.
Mm. And cane toads, have they come across to WA yet?
I don't know. Are they up the top? They're definitely in Queensland.
Yeah. I heard that they're coming all the way across to WA, Northern Territory.
You're in for a treat.
Yeah?
We used to, when we were little, get Granddad's golf clubs and play golf with them.
Did you kill them off?
No, it doesn't kill them. You just hop off and hop away after you've hit them.
Oh, poor things. So anybody who doesn't know, cane toads are a bit of a pest, aren't they?
All my family's dogs love licking them.
And they're poisonous.
It's nearly got 2 of my family's dogs from the cane toads. Not snakes, cane toads.
What would you like to share with us?
It's always interesting when you, in these remote locations, because obviously they can't always get volunteers because it's small towns, and the volunteers also only have like a certain amount of skill set. So sometimes you need to go in the ambulance with them when you're transferring a patient. And it's always an adventure when you're in the back of the ambulance, especially when it's a long trip and the patient needs to, especially when they're elderly and that, and they can't hold and they need to use the bathroom.
And there's no bathroom?
No.
How do you play that game?
The boys generally are luckier. They can just pull over on the side of the road and pull the door open and they just go out the side of the door. But women, it's a bit harder. I have had one man who was so urgent. I was like, oh, we're only 10 minutes away. You can just wait. We're 10 minutes. And he went in a vomit bag. I was sitting there on the way to the hospital holding his pee in a vomit bag.
Poor old guy.
Yeah. Or I've had a lady that was absolutely needed to go and we just ended up making a little towel fort around her and caught it all. She was absolutely busting, but
when you've got to go, you've got to go.
Yeah.
Have you had some patients that have been a bit tricky for you to manage? Maybe you haven't had a doctor around?
Yeah, I do remember one we ended up having to use ETS and I actually put a IO in for the first time. I've had done practice on mannequins, but my first one I ever put in was under the supervision of ETS.
Describe for people who don't know what ETS and IO are.
ETS is like telehealth. When sites don't have doctors, they triage their patient and fax through the triage form to telehealth, and then it goes on to this electronic sort of triaging system, and they obviously see the Cat 1s and 2s first. So if you've got someone very sick, they'll call through straight away, and if it's a Cat 4 or 5, obviously you're waiting a little bit longer, the same as you would in any other hospital.
Yeah.
And then an IO is the intraosseous, where it's a drill that you drill into their bone. So obviously I'd managed to get quite a few cannulas in and they just kept collapsing because this lady was so sick. So the doc's like, you need to put an IO. And I was like, oh, I've done it before on a mannequin, but not on a real person. So he talked me through it and I got it in successfully, but it's not something I'd ever really want to do again in that situation because it's
And you do that into the tibia.
Tibia, yeah.
Conversations with Nurses is proudly sponsored by Fat Burners Only, Australia's #1 online supplement store. Nursing is a demanding job and requires your body to be in tip-top condition. So why not head to Fat Burners Only, Australia's go-to store for supplements online. FBO provides you with a full range of supplements to support your hectic lifestyles and, of course, the energy and focus you need for those long shifts. FBO has Australia-wide free express shipping so your products arrive at your door faster. And as a special treat for our listeners, enter the code NURSES at the checkout to receive 10% off every order, with proceeds going towards supporting this very podcast. Look good, feel great, and operate at peak performance with Fat Burners Only. Proudly supporting nurses in association with your #1 nursing podcast, Conversations with Nurses. Hey, you know what complements great conversations is fine wine, and there is nothing finer than a bottle of Plantagenet wine. Whether you're relaxing after a long shift, at a gathering with friends, or lounging by the fire, Plantagenet wine provides the perfect complement to any occasion. Plantagenet wine is meticulously crafted in one of the most remote locations in the world, using finest ingredients available to create elegant and sophisticated wines that you deserve. Head to plantagenetwines.com for your online order and enter the code NURSES at the checkout to receive 10% off your order with free shipping Australia-wide on any order over $180. So stock up for winter or plan the perfect gift with the most enchanting collection of wines you'll ever try. Head to plantagenetwines.com and enter the code NURSES say is the most to start your interesting or
Plantagenet
unique experience that you've learnt as a remote rural nurse that maybe you wouldn't have learnt in a regular medical setting?
Just the everything, because you're doing everything. You're organising transport yourself. You're doing all the assessments. You're also making them food. You may be watching their kids because mum's come in with 4 little kids and knows no one else to watch them in these small towns sometimes, or sometimes.
So you play teacher as well?
Yeah, but you're just doing a bit of everything. You're managing the whole clinic. You're ordering, you're tidying, you're checking stock. You're doing so much more than what you would in the city, especially because when you go to work, you've just got your 4 patients and you go home, whereas there, when you're not busy, you also do have other things to be doing, like ordering pharmacy, making sure you've got like the resus trolley and all the equipment and the dressings are all stocked up, because if you don't order them, no one does, and then you don't have that piece of equipment when you need it.
Yeah. And when you order them, is it just something that you can do on the computer and then they get airdropped or delivered from Coles, or
No,
Where did they come from?